With the first pick,
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. Stadium Rant is here to give every team all the coverage they can handle. We got tons of great content on all the different streaming platforms, so make sure you check us out. We are short one man today. Lee is out for the count, down with a sickness, but we got me, Dan Baker, Evan Gooding, and Mason Beck here. We are going to be talking about some new segments. We cooked up some new segments for y'all. One of them's not so new, but we got some hidden faces. You got to name that player. We're going to give you some stats. You got to name the player based on the stats. Something we're calling the Pacer test. Y'all remember the Pacer test back in high school? That was the worst. But, so these guys are going to be on a 17-game pace, and we're going to see if we can change your mind a little bit. If these players didn't get injured, they continued on the pace that they were at, would you be viewing them different? And then the last one is going to be a future buy, sell, hold. We're going to drop some stats for 2024. Obviously, just throwing stuff out there, but we're kind of testing the waters already. Is this a likely stat line? If you think it's a likely stat line, and then you think that, hey, if they did that next year, I will definitely buy, and you think that's going to be the case, then get ahead of the game. Do it now. So we're going to jump off at the top here, hidden faces. All right, boys, I didn't even put it in the show doc, so none of you guys had a chance to jump the gun. So I got to put it in here right now. Oh, hold on. That's one of my clues. All right, boys. You got the show doc up?
Yep. We're good.
All right, I'm going to share it right now. This is top secret. I'm not going to let these guys cheat. So name that player. We got 2 quarterbacks to start. We're going to do a set of quarterbacks. We'll have, I think it's 3 running backs. Yeah, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers to compare, and then 2 tight ends. See what you guys got. I'll start filling out the bottom of this here. Once you guys throw out a few guesses, I can drop some clues.
So, first thing that stands out to me is 10 games played, which, if I believe he did play 10 games, it's Kyler Murray.
Interesting.
But I might be wrong. It might have been less games.
Yeah, I would have told you if you're right. It wasn't Kyler Murray. But, I took for the quarterbacks, I took 2 guys that got injured, and, I was looking at the stats, ended up being relatively similar, especially with their finish, QB 24 and 25 last season.
I want to say, is Daniel Jones?
No, it's not Daniel Jones. Let me double check it. I feel like he didn't even get to 8 games.
I wasn't sure how many games he played. 1, 2, 3,
I'm
4,
checking
5,
it right now.
6, so not 8. Okay.
Yeah, 6 games.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
And he still had more rushing yards. Daniel Jones had 206 rushing yards in his 6 games compared to these guys. So that's a clue in and of itself. They still play 10 and 8 games, and neither of them really put up much.
Is player A Jimmy?
It is not Jimmy G. I think he also played less than. They were pretty dead set on getting rid of him after the clause in the contract. Yeah, he played 7 games. All right, you guys want your first hint?
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. We're filling in that bottom row here. ADP, we're all draftaholics. This is all going to give us some major hints at, where they went last year. You'll be able to tell.
Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow for the first one. There's no other.
You got to lock in one or the other.
I'll go Herbert because Burrow seems like he might have been drafted, but before that.
It was incorrect. It was Burrow. Yeah, because I made you guess one or the other, and yeah, no. So player A is Joe Burrow, and I'm gonna throw in the second line here. So right now, Joe Burrow is going at the 608 QB7 off the board. Not a massive difference in the quarterback tier he's going in, but a big difference in where you can grab him in drafts right now. So the other quarterback, QB 14 last year, QB 19 this year. Um, Lack of rushing yards. Is this giving you guys like at least a type of quarterback?
Played 8 games. I can't think of a quarterback that only played 8 games.
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with. Did no AOC didn't play 8 games.
Ryan Tannehill.
Watson didn't play 8
All
games.
right, never mind. He's not getting drafted that high.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he was definitely undrafted. It was not Ryan Tannehill, and let's see here. He did end up playing 10 games. That would have been the Joe Burrow similar-ish. Oh man, Tannehill is just so bad. Oh
Hey,
man,
he's the goat in disguise. All right, just wait. He's gonna play from Joe Flacco this next year. When some team needs him, he'll be there. It's gonna happen.
I would
Always
take
been
that
the
bet.
believer.
However, you want to address it.
I don't know how I want to address that. If he plays
Yeah.
one game,
Oh, you know who this might be? Is it, or do we already? Will Levis?
No, no one guessed it yet.
Is it Will Levis?
It is not Will Levis. I do think
Levis
Will
was
Levis
not getting
probably.
drafted that high last year. He was not getting
Yeah,
drafted.
he wouldn't have been drafted,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
he
right, that's
would
right.
have. I bet he has definitely more than 25 rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to corner this 8 games
don't-
played.
Levis really doesn't have much
Not
rushing
much.
yards.
Yeah, I was gonna say not much
Yeah,
more. He had 25 attempts, which is much more than the this guy, but only 57 yards.
He just
Barely
had that
over
one
2
run
yards.
where he like did the flip or whatever. So a lot of people think he's a running quarterback, and that just puts that idea in your mind. And like I realized that because when I was writing about him, I was like, no way, that's all he has. And then I was like, oh well, actually, yeah, that put it in my
Yeah,
mind too.
that's interesting. Let's see, Will Levis. I actually have him up because I was just doing a Ridley write up. Let's see here. What did he do
No,
in college with the rushing? Because I
mm,
feel like he was known as the guy who can get outside of the pocket. Also, let me know if you guys, I guess, need another hint. I didn't
well,
make one, but I could figure one out.
I'm thinking of like who's getting drafted around QB 19 now, and like Deshaun Watson, I feel like's around
Yeah,
there,
Deshaun Watson.
but he didn't play 8 games.
Yeah, he didn't make it. He didn't
Didn't
make
play
it.
8 games and would have had more rushing yards.
Yeah.
Think of the type of quarterback first off. 14 rush attempts, 25 yards in 8 games. He's not moving much.
He only played like 3 snaps. Thinking Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, he
Yeah,
didn't even play
single
one.
snap. You guys are in the right realm. All right, since we're already kind of at this point now, think of a main foe for Aaron.
Kirk?
Yep, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins. So technically 1-1 right now. Let's get the next guy on the board here. We're moving
Yeah,
on
that was
to
a buzzer
running
beater. You were
back.
about to say it too. You were about to that last in. I feel like would have given it away.
I was definitely close. All right, let's see here. Nailed it. All right, guys. What are we thinking? What are we seeing? 3 players up at the running back position.
1,040 rushing
And
yards.
you know what? I should have done this on the first one. My bad, radio listeners out there in Atlanta. We got 3 running backs on the board. As you guys are thinking through it, feel free to shout out when you have a guess. But all relatively in the same ballpark for rush attempts, between 205 rush attempts and 229. The lowest amount of rushing yards any of these 3 running backs has was 935. There was another with 1,040 yards and the other with 1,049. Then all of them were over 4.5 per clip. There was one player who had 5 rushing touchdowns. The other 2 had 7 rushing touchdowns. All of them got at least 33 targets. 2 of them had specifically 49 targets. Not necessarily known for their passing work. Well, I don't want to say that. They have prowess. I don't want to throw you guys too far off the scent here. But at least last year did most of their damage on the ground.
Part of me for the first one says Joe Mixon, but did he miss 4 games?
I don't think he missed 4 games, and I
Joe
think
Mixon's the second one.
if he ever got 5 yards per carry, the whole world would lose their mind.
I think
Everyone
Joe
was
Mixon's the second one though, with 935 yards, 4.56, 7 touchdowns. That sounds about right. And needed a lot of checkdowns from not really having Burrow all year. 44 receptions.
Right. I mean, Joe Mixon did have a ton of targets. He's not one of these players here. And I do think Mixon had like in the 70s for targets, at least high 60s. Joe
What
Mixon.
about Pacheco here? Is that Pacheco?
Okay, yeah. Who? Which one? Which player are you guessing?
Player A, Pacheco?
No, not player A.
I didn't think he hit.
And just to hit the quick fact check, Mixon had 64 targets last year, 75 the year before. Definitely tons of check downs. I feel like he sputtered out a little bit on the receiving game when Browning took over in comparison, though. Yeah, one spike game in the receptions, but mostly downwards after Browning took over. Browning was surprisingly okay last year. All right, you guys ready for the next line here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's see it.
Well, that doesn't help.
Doesn't help at all?
A little bit, but
Their fantasy finish from last year. I feel like you guys probably have a general good idea of where these guys landed.
Rashad White?
Rashad White was like the top 5 RBs.
RB5, I think.
Yeah. Because that's all the receiving work. So none of these guys have the receiving work. But I know he was around 1,000 yards, I think. But there's no way he was 5 yards to carry either.
Hold on.
No, definitely under 5 per carry. I think he missed the 1,000-yard mark, even with an obscene amount of carries. Yeah, he had 272 rushing attempts. I know that's got to be top 3 in the league, if not top 2. 990 yards, 3.6 per carry. Still missed the mark with one of the highest rushing attempts in the NFL last year. Not great, Bob.
So think about this, Evan. Think of running backs who miss games but are still that efficient. I'm just thinking injury-prone running backs now.
No, Swift didn't miss any games. Did Kenneth Walker miss any games?
I think he did.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker's missed, I think, 3 games in his first 2 seasons.
But Kenneth Walker doesn't get much receptions.
No,
so
he does
maybe
not.
I felt like
he's missed 2 full games in his first 2 seasons, never topped more than 37 targets.
Yeah, I was going to say Kenneth Walker. Well, is he player A?
He is not. All right, I will give another line here. You know what? I'll just drop both of these bottom 2.
Is James Conner one of them?
I will say that you guys have
right
said the names of 2 of them. You just have not even tried to lock in which player it was.
Okay, well, is James Conner player A? Just because you said
James
that.
Conner is player A.
Yeah,
you got
said.
Another, let me color code these. Mason, you'll be your 49er red. Evan, you got the powder blues. Okay.
Is Pacheco B then? Or C? He's B. He's got to be B.
No, but I was going to say C. I feel like actually
he's got to be B. He finished better than 23. He finished better than 23.
Yeah.
It is player B is Pacheco.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking he only missed like a game or 2, but I forgot there was that stretch where McKinnon, everyone was
right, and then on top
McKinnon.
of it, they already clinched the last game of the season, so they just pulled all their starters. So he missed 2 games in the middle of the season, and then the last game of the year. I honestly thought that he cracked 1,000 for some reason. When I was putting this together, I thought that would kind of throw everybody off the scent that that's Pacheco. But really efficient in the pass game, caught 44 of 49 pass attempts or targets.
No
Very
more
solid.
McKinnon this year
And
either. No more McKinnon.
no, exactly. No McKinnon. It's just him, CEH, whatever rugby player that they brought in, and Keontae Ingram. So he's got it made out. Any guesses at player C? I will say, actually, you know what, Evan, you said his name, but you said it definitely was not this player.
Did I say Najee?
No, you're thinking this guy definitely didn't miss any games, is what you said.
DeAndre Swift.
what's it
DeAndre
called?
Swift.
Oh,
DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift. I do
okay.
feel like I gave too much of a clue for that one, so I'm gonna call that last player a draw.
That's a draw. That's a draw for sure. Let's keep it going.
All right, so you guys are still knotted up. This is neck and neck.
Yeah.
We are. I'll drop the. This is another threefer, and it's wide receivers. So there's just so many of them. So I'm gonna drop the fantasy points along with the first one here. They are in a pretty tight knit group. They're each 3 wide receivers spread apart in their wide receiver finish. Player A had 130 targets for 83 receptions off 130 targets, 1,024 receiving yards, just 2 touchdowns. He had 16 red zone targets, only caught 5 of those, and had 1 red zone touchdown. Pretty abysmal efficiency in the red zone. All of these wide receivers played all 17 games. So that's solid, and they all finished between wide receiver 25 and 31. Player A was wide receiver 31. Let's see here. Oh, we got a comment coming in. Okay. I did not see these. Okay. Nick Mullick out here just destroying our analysts on the board. Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta double check the timestamps. We'll see. We'll see what came in first.
It's this one's a little bit more tight knit. So we went through player A. Player B caught 79 of 132 targets. That is not 10,020 yards. That is 1,020 yards. He had 4 receiving touchdowns, was a little bit more efficient with his red zone targets. However, did not have many of them. Caught 5 of his 10 red zone targets, still only had 1 red zone touchdown, similar to player A. End up wide receiver 28 here. Player C, most targets of the group with 137. He caught 103 of those. He had 1,014 receiving yards, so under 10 yards per reception. Did have the 4 receiving touchdowns, was the most efficient of these 3 wide receivers in the red zone, caught 9 of 15 and had 4 red zone touchdowns, and end up wide receiver 25 on the season.
Okay. They played all games. I didn't say that seems like Waddle.
Is player A D-Hop?
Player
He got
is
more than
not
he got more than
D-Hop.
2 receiving TDs. So no.
I threw all in. I threw everything in. You got the ADPs now as well. So if you guys aren't out there watching on YouTube, we have the player A last year was the wide receiver 25 off the board and was the overall 607. This year doesn't drop much. He is now at the 612, but he is the wide receiver 35. I found that you can see that right in these data points. A lot of these guys aren't far off of their ADP last year overall in the draft, but they did drop significantly in their wide receiver ranking. What does that tell you? Wide receivers are continuing to be pounded at the top of the draft. Up to you where you want to take your strategy. Obviously, stay water. Got to go where the draft takes you. But honestly, I think this might be the year where I zag a little bit more. I'm usually comfortable taking wide receiver at the top as they are much less likely to get injured. But if you can grab a couple of three top 18 running backs in the first 5 rounds and still get a couple of, top end wide receivers, I think it could pay off.
Okay, these are all very similar stats. This Scary Terry, one of them. That's kind of my.
You guys got to guess a player. You can't just say one of the three.
Say Scary Terry is. No, never mind. He was
trying to think of who has no touchdowns but good yards. Ooh, I got one. Chris Godwin. Who's at least touchdowns?
Dude, no.
Player A.
Player A is Chris Godwin. And
let's go.
Our boy, I hope you're not reading his comments. Nick's giving the first reader.
Davante Adams.
We're gonna have to bring Nick Mullick in on the show. He is killing this game right now. Player C is not Davante Adams. I wanted to show his comment early on, but I didn't want to give away any of the answers.
Okay. Who?
Pittman?
Okay, hold up.
No.
Thielen. It's Thielen at C.
That was impressive. I thought that was going to be the hardest of all of these to get. It is Adam Thielen at player C.
By saying Adams, so it made me think of Adam Thielen and like.
Oh, that's
just word association.
That ADP was so low too.
To think about like who really beat expectations. I mean, Adam Thielen. I mean, there's no way he does it again with like that, and that's why his ADP continued to drop. I mean, down to wide receiver 67. I mean, I'm not trusting starting him in my lineups this season and that makes sense for him to drop. And I mean, probably most of those stats came through the first 4 or 5 weeks or whatever.
Yes, that was the thing too. Yeah, Thielen just popped off at the beginning of the season, pretty much dropped off at the end, and that's what everyone worries about when you get up there in age. Do you have enough in the tank to make it last the full season? But yeah, in half PPR formats, Thielen weeks 2 through 6 had 16.9, 26, 11.7, 22.2, and 23 points in half PPR format. So not even his best format. After that, he did not have a single game above 13 points. So very hot to start. Bye week hit. Maybe there was a change in philosophy. However, he dropped off the face of the earth. That being said, you can see on if you're on YouTube, his ADP right now is sitting at 1406, wide receiver 67. Even if you think he can just do a portion of what he did at the beginning of the season, he'd be worth the draft pick at the end of the draft, worth nothing. And if he doesn't pop off like he did at the beginning of last season, drop him, move on. But I think he's a sneaky pick, not a sexy pick, just because, we're all a little bit worn out.
Is Michael Pittman player B?
I said Pittman.
It is not.
I don't think it is.
I know he still got a good amount of volume, but the touchdown just weren't there.
Player B's name was said, but it was guessed with the wrong player.
Terry McLaurin's player B.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, we got it.
Okay, I had a feeling one of them was Terry just because. I
was going to guess Calvin Ridley there.
Just with the passing volume.
Yeah, the lack of red zone efficiency really hit home for Terry McLaurin. Sam Howell, I was just looking this up. I believe Terry McLaurin was 76th in terms of catchable rate. Like his targets, being a catchable target, 76th in the league. Sam Howell, although, he did well for fantasy, didn't support anybody on his team. Not a tight end, not a wide receiver. I believe McLaurin was the highest, and I think he was wide receiver 28 in half PPR.
Yeah, it wasn't because just that passing volume is what I don't know. I mean, just McLaurin is. Hopefully, he has a better season, just with hopefully a better quarterback. I mean, I love Sam Howell, but the efficiency is just not there.
Right. I like Howell, the player. I do think that if he got an opportunity in Seattle, I do think he would improve. A, that was basically his rookie season because he didn't play at all in his rookie season. And then B, it was a very weird spread offense where at the same time they didn't really utilize people in their true skill set. I feel like McLaurin wasn't like the primary downfield target. Dotson was barely involved. Lots of targets to Curtis Samuel. Um, this year, if he plays with the Seattle Seahawks, you got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN, along with Mason's boy, Noah Fant.
The GOAT.
All right, so
himself, Noah Fant, ready for that season this year. Colby Parkinson's gone. It's all him. He's got it. This is the year.
I was saying, man, Colby Parks is that dude. He's clearly just taking away so much from Noah Fant.
I've gotten a little more high on Colby Parkinson lately. So.
Okay. I mean, I wish we could go back like 2-3 months ago and you could join the argument, but no. Let's get to these players here. We got tight ends on the board right now. Player A caught 73 of his 91 targets, had 673 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, caught 5 of his 9 red zone targets, but did not get a touchdown off of those targets. Played in 16 games, ended up the tight end 12 on the season in half PPR. Was drafted as the tight end 11 last year, and this year is going off the board as the tight end 5. Player B caught 53 of his 90 targets. Bad efficiency there. It still ended up with a similar receiving yard total with 667. Had 3 touchdowns. Only targeted 5 times in the red zone. Feel like any tight end should be, any starting tight end, and it is a starting tight end, should be targeted probably more than 5 times in the red zone. Caught 3 of those, did get 1 red zone touchdown, played all 17 games, ended up tight end 14. Went off the board as tight end 7, though, last year, so a disappointing season, and is still going off the board at tight end 7. Felt like this position of all of them was probably the easiest one to guess given the ADPs.
Okay, well, you said ADP 5, which I'm pretty sure is Kincaid for the first one. So
it is absolutely Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
Also, where's homie over here?
I was debating. Yeah, I was debating Andrews or Kincaid is going as 5.
Nick Mullen got it again. Hit me up on the socials, man. Hit me up on the DMs and at Follow the Volume on X. Maybe we can get you in one of these. This is a lot of fun. We love having our guests try to join in and guess these. But you're doing 2, you're doing 5, but you're doing 2 while you're killing these guys, and I want to see it live in action. So hit us up. We got Mason. You did lock up the dub there, but I want to see if either of you guys can guess the final player here.
Yeah, I was gonna go likely for player A, but I was like, I'm also really high on likely, and there's no way he hit that yardage.
And
right, and he would have been the tight end 7 off the board.
Yeah.
Tight end 7 last year and this year.
Tight end 7 last year and this year for ADP.
For ADP. Next time around, you guys are going
to George Kittle.
It is Kyle Pitts. George Kittle is tight end 6 right now in ADP.
And Kittle got more. I think Kittle got like above 750 and more touchdowns. I'm pretty sure. So.
Yeah, Kittle I think topped the 1,000-yard mark again.
Yeah, I believe so. Feel bad saying that as I understand. I'm a
like
Panthers
99% sure of that. But yeah, so that is gonna wrap up this segment. Next time around, you guys are picking the players I want to guess, and I want you guys throwing these ADPs because at this point I know ADPs like the back of my hand. All right, we're moving on though. We got the Pacer test. Pacer test, just a quick reminder. Players that missed some games or maybe had a significant part of their offense, like, Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow missing a lot of games. This is going to be their pace, playing fully healthy. Starting it off, we got at quarterback, Kyler Murray. He played 8 games. His 17-game pace was let me get that off the board. 17 game pace was 374 completions, attempted 570 or would have attempted 570 passes, 3,823 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Would have had 94 rush attempts for 519 yards and 6 touchdowns. This would have wound up with Kyler would have had 302.82 fantasy points in 4 point per passing touchdown leagues. That would have given him a QB8 finish on the season. So Kyler Murray right now, I feel like he's getting some mixed views. I feel like some people are like, this is my target. I am intentionally passing on earlier solid targets to go and grab a guy like Kyler Murray there, maybe a guy like Dak Prescott later on. But I feel like he's dropped in ADP for a reason. People still have a negative view, whether it be the injury, only really having Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride to throw the ball to. Right now, his ADP is 701 on Sleeper. So 701, he is the QB8 off the board. He would have finished QB8 if he finished the season. And last year, if he did play the full season at that pace, would have beat out Patrick Mahomes, Tua, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud. But he would have been just behind Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love. So what do you guys think when you see these numbers? Does it give you a little bit more faith? Because he would have been on this pace without Marvin Harrison. What are you guys thinking?
Definitely gives me more faith, but I still think he's kind of being put appropriately. Like I still probably would draft Tua and Stroud over him.
Without factoring ADP, you just like them on the season better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't. So who's around him ADP wise again?
So one pick ahead of him is Joe Burrow. I'll go off the sleeper ADPs because that's what we always use.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow 604 ADP, Kyler Murray 701. Right behind him is Dak Prescott 703. And Evan, I know you're big on Jordan Love. He's the 802. Mason big on Brock Purdy. He's the 906. Personally, I've been going with either Brock Purdy or Jaden Daniels, and then usually taking Jaden Daniels with like a last round Matthew Stafford, something like that. Give a little bit of a pairing for that, just in case Daniels isn't what we're hoping he is, but he's got the rushing upside. I think Murray's a great pick at the 7th round. I think he's a value. He's got the legs. He's got at least two guys that should be pretty dominant in their position in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. The only way I am taking Kyler Murray at the 701 is if I'm getting one of those stacks. I really am banking on getting one of these later round guys because I do think Prescott, Love, Purdy, Daniels all have a legitimate chance of beating out Kyler Murray.
I mean, I'm honestly think I'm higher on Kyler Murray than a lot of people. I mean, especially in like dynasty leagues, I've been big on trying to get him just because his years ago in dynasty leagues, 2 QBs, he was getting drafted in the 1st round. Now he's dropping to the back of the 2nd. And why? Yeah. Because he missed half of the season, or a little more than half. He came back, produced solid numbers like we're talking about. His pace, that's great numbers. That's good fantasy numbers. That was with him not even being sure if he was going to come back at all this season. Was he even 100% last year? Probably not. They just rushed him back because the Cardinals were the most boring team in the NFL. They had to try to bring in views. It is a business at the end of the day, so they might have brought him back a little earlier. I mean, he's going to have this full off season, and maybe, he doesn't have as much help, but Marvin Harrison, after a couple weeks, could really be shown as this elite wide receiver. Kyler's also never really had the greatest help. I mean, even though Marvin Harrison Jr. is a rookie, and I just said some good things about him, he could be a bust, but he could easily be the best wide receiver that Kyler Murray has ever had. And I just everyone the lack of talent. It's been like that every single year. And Kyler Murray, when he's played full seasons, obviously, sometimes during the second half of the season, he struggled. There's that whole that he plays too much Call of Duty stigma around him or whatever. Yeah. But still, ridiculous. I mean, I still think Kyler Murray is just he's got a lot to prove this year for sure. I mean, just because so many people are down with him, there's talks that Arizona even wants to potentially move on from him, even though I don't think that will realistically happen. He's got a lot to prove.
Can with this contract situation.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, to your point, I agree that he always puts up numbers without having a great surrounding cast. I will say, he had Hopkins in 2020. He ended up being the wide receiver 7.5
okay.
PPR
I
that
don't know
year.
why I forgot about D
He would
Hop.
have
D Hop's
been
the best receiver he's ever had.
right. Yeah, he was 28 at that time. I get like later stage, 2022 Hopkins. Definitely probably won't be what Marvin Harrison Jr. can be. Obviously, we have yet to see it, but he Marvin Harrison Jr. is just, and he's saying it right here. He's that dude. He's just too good, man. He's for sure sound talent. There's nothing wrong with this game. So I think that Kyler Murray has a ton of, I don't want to say untapped potential because he has definitely showed us some of it. But I agree, we haven't seen the best from him. And if they could go out and grab one more guy, I really think that could put them over the top. This obviously won't happen. It's interdivision, but could you imagine, Mason, how mad would you be if Ayuk went to the Cardinals?
Yeah.
I don't like the Cardinals, but they're like the little brother. So out of everybody in the division,
Right.
if somebody else is going to succeed, go Cardinals.
He might actually go to the
I get
Chargers.
that.
I've seen the odds on Vegas as Chargers is the second highest odds.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys probably should have the second highest odds. I would say up there, the Steelers, just because of
Steelers
need
had the
and
most
cap
odds.
space.
Yeah.
If Brandon Ayuk goes to the Steelers, like all hopes are out the window for me, in my opinion. I love Brandon Ayuk, and he's going to be needed in that offense. Arthur Smith, in his 3 years in Atlanta, never had a wide receiver above wide receiver 36. Horrendous. This is terrible.
But
And then, and also we were just talking about Kyle Pitts. Remember that stat, that fun stat?
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts with a whole 5 red zone targets, and he played every game. What are you doing, Arthur Smith? It'll never get old dunking on him because he sucks. But yeah, I never understood it, and there's so much room on the table. If Ayuk goes anywhere other than those 2 teams, though, not Chargers, not Steelers, you guys have a favorite for, let's say, one favorite for Ayuk's production, and then one favorite for like it benefiting that team.
I mean, he's going to stick with the Niners. It's just immediately after he requested a trade, the reports dropped that Patriots were trying to trade for him, and they said, no, we're not trading him. I mean, and everyone's freaking out. Debo did the same thing. He requested a trade. It's just, I think it's just him trying to get leverage that might push the Niners to spend an extra $1 million a year.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. The players don't have any leverage in the situation. This is all that they can do. Like, I stopped following you on Instagram. It's like, okay, we're still gonna like keep you on the roster, and every day that you miss is a $40,000 fine. Have fun with that, and off you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, just the way the Niners front office responded to the trade request, just like I was very worried at first when Ayuk did request the trade, but the way that the front office responded, I was just like, oh yeah, they want to keep him. There's no way he's gone. I mean, I see it more likely Debo gets traded, which I hope doesn't happen, at least this season, because we can afford both of them. It's just there's a lot of question about giving both of them huge contracts for the future just because Purdy needs to be paid next season. So I think that's really what's stalling it. But I think Ayuk's, and I could just be a hopeful Niners fan, but he is going to stay. It's going to happen. Niner fans have talked so much. They talk so much crap about Debo. Just like get that diva out of here, and they're doing it right now about Ayuk. But every Niner fan loves Debo right now. That's just I'm responsible for it too. Sometimes I will hate the players, and then the second they're back, I'm just like, oh yeah, you're my favorite player again. That's just how we roll as a fan base.
Right. Yeah. The only thing I would say, who was it? Clint. Clint, our guy from Stadium Rant, brought this up. I think he brought up a great point. Baltimore Ravens, they're in a win now mode. They need a solid wide receiver too, and Ayuk would pair so well with Zay Flowers, a downfield threat for Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers is going to be that guy in the short to intermediate routes that can like create after the play is broken. You can do the same, but downfield and really turn it into something huge. Mark Andrews, possession, big bodied guy, red zone threat. That would be a really scary tandem on top of having Derrick Henry out of the backfield. Good luck stopping that offense. So, really hope that doesn't happen for the Browns' sake. But I digress. Let's move on to our running back here. We got Jonathan Taylor, played just 10 games. He was on a 17-game pace for 287 rushing attempts, 1,260 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, another 32 receptions off 39 targets, 260 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Total of 14 touchdowns. Would have had over 1,500 total yards. This would have given him 252 half PPR points, and that would have put him at RB5. That would have put him ahead of Mixon, Kyron Williams, Rashad White, Derrick Henry, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Saquon. Just behind Brees, Etienne, Mostert, obviously CMC by a long shot, but he was behind. That would have put him behind Brees by half of a point, behind Etienne by 1.4 points, and behind Mostert by 3.2. CMC was a long shot ahead of them. I think he had more than 100 points more than the RB2. Insane. Reason why he's in over 50% of championship games.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm just going to jump in with Taylor. I don't think that he's going to produce those touchdown numbers. I think the yardage could still be there, but I just think with Anthony Richardson, what he is, and just he's a hard runner in the red zone. They might give Richardson the ball more and let him run it, whether it's designed plays or pass. If it's passing plays, not necessarily going to do as much checkdowns. He might run the ball more, and I think that's really going to hurt Taylor's touchdown numbers. I still do. The rushing numbers are going to be there. And I mean, Taylor, when he was playing, it was good, but he was playing with Minshew. It's a completely different style quarterback.
That's what I was going to end the point on, too, is like, mind that almost all of these numbers are with Minshew. Taylor and Richardson played one game together, technically, but Jonathan Taylor had 15% of snaps in that game, and Richardson, that was his last game of the season, only had 33% of snaps. So can't even count that. Basically, everything came with Minshew, and I agree. There's going to be, a give and take between Richardson and JT's rushing touchdowns. So this is the other side of the coin. We see how it could have played out last year, but now there's a new situation. Evan, what do you think? Do you think let's give it a little leeway. Let's say RB5 to RB8. Do you think that's within the cards for JT this season?
No. I think he's being overdrafted right now too. Like, I could see Saquon being better than him, Etienne being better than him, Achane being better than him. Lots of guys. He's currently being drafted as RB5, right? So it's right on pace with his last. His ADPs are. I'm looking at his ADP on Sleeper right now. It's
okay,
5.
solid.
So
yeah.
It's too rich for my blood with them too, especially since we haven't seen him with Richardson to make both your guys' points.
Yep. RB5, 202 off the board in redraft right now, going just ahead of Saquon and Kyron. Healthy jump after that to the next guy, Travis Etienne at 211, Achane right after that. I do think that Jonathan Taylor definitely has RB5 to 8 within the cards. I do think that we've seen Shane Steichen's system work for running backs. And when he was in Philadelphia, he didn't even have like fantastic running backs at that time. So I think it's going to work. I don't think he's going to have the same target numbers, and I don't think he's going to have the same touchdown numbers, which will hurt significantly. Probably lacking a little bit of that boom that you're hoping when you draft a guy in the early second. So for the most part, I am steering clear of him. However, the only guys that are going behind him on the board that I would take over him is Kyron. I think Saquon's in a very similar situation, personally. Jalen Hurts is he has the most rushing touchdowns of any. I haven't fact checked this, but he has to have the most rushing touchdowns of any quarterback in his first few years in the league. Let's see. Right now, he is up to, wow, last 3 seasons, 15, 13, and 10 rushing touchdowns. That is insane. Didn't really play much in his first season. So yeah, that's a total of 38 touchdowns over the last 3 seasons. Absolutely nuts. I don't know if Richardson's going to average, what's that, about 12 and a half touchdowns per game. That's insane. That's too much. And on top of it, they have much better wide receivers on that team that would take away from him.
Yeah.
So I like JT over Saquon. I think Kyron, on the other hand, we've seen him just get fed. And I spoken about this, not a big believer in Blake Corum. So that's
I
where I
mean,
stand.
the only major upside I do see from Jonathan Taylor is that it's looking like his backup will be Trey Sermon, who
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am sad about because we spent a third round pick and I was super high believer on Trey Sermon. Probably one of my most drafted rookie running backs
You're with
ever.
your brother.
Yeah, and he just disappointed. And I mean, look at what Trey Sermon's done in the time he's gotten. Really nothing. And then there's Evan Hull, which maybe could do something. He did miss the entirety of last season pretty much, except like the first game. Um, but it's JT's backfield. That is the upside. It's just touchdowns are king for running back. I mean, you can have a guy with 100 yards and say, let's keep out receptions. Say JT rushes for 100 yards, no touchdowns. A guy who's going to rush for 50 yards and gets one touchdown is going to have a better fantasy week. And that's
Yep.
just touchdowns are king for RBs. And
A la Gus Edwards.
Yep.
I mean, that's just how it is. Like, I'd rather take a guy who, I mean, maybe Zeke gets more touchdowns this year than Jonathan Taylor does. I mean, that's not
I
like
heard this
how the
earlier in the season. His rushing touchdown prop bet, at least earlier, was at 5.5. I feel like I'd take that over to be
but
personally. Even if they
it could
go
be
very
that low
pass heavy.
because Dallas did not run the ball much in the red zone last year.
Yeah, that's fair, but like someone's gonna have to get some rushing touchdowns. There's no way this team like ends the season with less than, I would say, 12, 14. And I feel like Zeke's gonna have roughly half of them. So it puts it right around that mark, but I do think that he will be the goal line back over Rico. I could see Rico being the between the 20s guy though. A little bit more efficient at this stage in his career. All right. So we got to move a little quicker than we are. We got wide receiver up next. Jalen Waddle played 11 games over the course of the season at 60% snap share or above. There was 3 games where he played under 60% snap share. I wrote an article about this. He doesn't miss a lot of games. He doesn't leave a lot of games. Last year was the exception. He was clearly trying to fight through multiple injuries. In those 11 games with 60% snap share or more, his 17-game pace was 96 receptions off 136 targets, 1,328 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. Despite all of this, even like, just the season that he had, he played 14 games on the season, still ended with over 1,000 receiving yards, 1,014 receiving yards. Impressive that he was able to do that with missing as much snaps as he did. But the 17-game pace that I gave you earlier would have put him at 218.7 half PPR points. That would have made him wide receiver 11. I think that's a little bit closer to what we're used to seeing him go off in fantasy drafts the past year. He was very solid contributor. He was going in the late second, early third in the 2023 drafts. I think that Waddle's he's due for a bounce back. I really like Waddle. I think this offense is made for speedsters being efficient. Yes, maybe because there are so many of those on this team, he's going to be a little bit boomer bust. But I'm very happy to have him as my wide receiver too, especially where you can get him right now in drafts. He's going a little bit later than he did last year. Right now, his ADP is sitting at. I was trying to buy some time. Where the hell is he?
It's 19. Getting drafted around 312 is what I don't.
Yes, 312
Yeah,
on sleeper.
312. Yeah,
312 on sleeper is gorgeous. If I am at the back, if I'm the 112 pick, you can take your pick of, JT, Saquon. If you wanted to go wide receiver, a lot of times Garrett Wilson, Puka, maybe a shot at AJ Brown, probably not, but there that's all on the board. And if you can swing back around and grab a high efficiency guy like Waddle, and then maybe pair him with a Michael Pittman, who's a safer floor guy, or maybe like Cooper Cup's going around that range, Devonta Smith. All of these guys have had huge seasons here or there. So I like pairing Waddle with a guy with a little bit safer of a floor.
I think Waddle's definitely gonna have a bounce back season. I mean, the injuries he was really fighting to stay on the field, and I don't think he was 100% in the season after his first injury. I just really never think he was back to full health, and then just obviously Tyreek had was on pace for a record breaking year. Obviously,
Yeah,
Tyreek's gonna have another good year, more than likely. Obviously nothing's for sure, but Tyreek is gonna have another great year. But I do not see Tyreek doing what he did last year. I think it's going to go down at least a little bit, and that's going to give Waddle more opportunities. Maybe the team does switch to more running game with HN. Just that could be an option, and that could kind of hurt Waddle a little bit. But Waddle I mean, if you look at what he did after his rookie season, it's the potential is all there, and just the injuries. As long as he can stay healthy, I think Waddle really can be. He has potential to be top 12. I doubt it, just because having two top 12 wide receivers on one team is something. But Waddle should finish within the top 18. That's just if as long as he's healthy, just the way that offense works. I just see that's kind of where I'm seeing him. I mean, floor wide receiver 24. That's like the worst I see him, and that's
absolutely,
like the
especially if
worst.
he's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like to be fair, there usually is at least one pairing of two wide receivers on the same team that finish in the top 12. Last year in half PPR would have been Debo and Ayuk. Oh no, I'm sorry, Ayuk was 14. Hmm. Okay, well, last year it looks like we didn't have one, but
I
I
think it
know
was
that we've had
Devonta and AJ Brown.
Devonta did
I
not
think
finish in the
Devontae
top
finished
12
just
last
after.
year, but the year before, I believe it was Devonta and AJ, Higgins and Chase did it one year, and then Waddle and Hill did do it a different year.
See, look at
So,
that, Evan. Higgins finished as a top 12.
yeah, yeah, Evan. um,
Yeah,
so let's get to the point though. Waddle, given these numbers, where would you be willing to draft him? And are you willing to reach at all with his ADP being at 312? I personally am willing to take him in the early to mid third for sure.
yeah.
I've taken him at the 301 in mocks and not felt bad about it at all.
Yeah, I truly believe in this offense with the way how they're running it too, and I truly feel like we have yet to see his full potential. I don't think we will see that until after Tyreek Hill and he gets more opportunity. But
Right.
yeah, I think that this is still a great year for him, and definitely got top 12 potential.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and Miami
I'm
is a
going
little
with
bit more middle of the pack for rushing last year than we think. They had the seventh most rushing yards per game, and then they were 15th in terms of their pass play percentage. So middle of the pack in terms of how frequently they're throwing the ball, and they're rushing the ball at a high efficiency, so ending up with a high yardage compared to other teams. I, I do think that this past year it can't go too far in the other direction with the talent they have on this team. Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, bringing in another playmaker in Malik Washington, got OBJ signed on now. even Jonnu Smith's the guy who can make stuff happen after the catch at tight end. So, and that's not even mentioning the running backs. So
Yeah,
I do think that they got a good chance of improving on the passing numbers even.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm willing to reach on Waddle a little bit. If I'm looking at ADP, the three wide receivers taken before him are DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Debo. Debo's probably going to finish with more touchdowns, and Debo's ADP has gone up a lot just because of the
Yep.
Ayuk news, the uncertainty. I mean, this if Ayuk does sign an extension, Debo's ADP is going to drop, and
Yeah.
I mean, I think Waddle will finish with more yards, not as many touchdowns, but DJ Moore. I mean, DJ Moore is gonna have some weeks where he wins. He's absolutely gonna win it for you, but Keenan Allen's gonna take a lot of that target. Even Odunze is gonna feed into that. DeAndre Swift is a great receiving back, is gonna feed into that. And then we got uh, Diggs. Just there's so much competition there. You know, CJ Stroud has already shown great connection with Tank Dell and Nico Collins, where it's hard to necessarily trust Diggs. And then I mean
Yeah.
behind the one receiver who I would consider taking it, like the two behind him is Neighbors in the 4-2, and then Pittman in the 4-3. I would maybe take Pittman if you're wanting, a better floor, but Waddle's got a way higher ceiling than Pittman in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like
100%, 100%.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how I view it. I mean, Waddle or Pittman, just and around that range, if they're both there, Waddle for sure. If you're looking for a higher ceiling, I mean, he should still produce consistent numbers. But if you want to take Pittman there instead, just for consistency, I wouldn't say no to that.
See, I would for sure take him over Pittman. I think, and then, but I agree with everything everybody else who said. I mean, unless Ayuk does get traded, then I take Debo over Waddle there. But that's if he doesn't, then I'm taking Waddle over Debo for sure too, and DJ Moore especially, and Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. Definitely over Stephon.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's see if we can squeeze this guy in. Mark Andrews, he played 9 games last season, not including one game where he played 11% of the snaps. That was the last game he played. His season total, or his 17 game pace, 81 receptions on 111 targets, 984 yards, and 11 touchdowns. This would have given him 204.9 half PPR points, which would have made him tight end 1 over Laporta by 8.6 points. Definitely kind of riding off of the touchdowns, but Laporta did the same exact thing. That's the nature of the beast at the tight end position. Laporta had his 10 touchdowns on the season. Very efficient with his targets. 120 targets for Laporta in a rookie season is nuts. But Mark Andrews kind of being slept on. Last year, he was going off forward at that 2-3 turn, especially with Kelsey going so early in drafts last year. Andrews, in a lot of home leagues, was even getting pushed up from there. But yeah, he would have beat Laporta by 8.6 points on a 17 game pace. Evan Ingram was tight end 2, and he would have beaten Evan Ingram by 31.6 points last season. Obviously, it's a little bit different this year. We got a very healthy top 5. And if Debo gets traded, I could see George Kittle getting bumped up into that, like making it a healthy top 6. Kyle Pitts has upside this year. Where is the earliest you are willing to take um, Mark Andrews in a draft? I'm pulling up his ADP right now.
He's getting drafted at 412. I would rather wait a little bit or take Kincaid there instead, to be honest. Andrews, just the injury
Kincaid's going at
concerns.
504. It's only four picks later.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather probably take Kincaid just because the injury concerns of Andrews over the years has really started to concern me. Likely could start to work into more role when Andrews is healthy. Obviously, Andrews is Lamar's guy, but that's Zay Flowers is going to step up. I feel like a lot more this year. They didn't really bring in anybody. They drafted. Why can't I think of his name?
Devontae Walker.
Devontae Walker, yeah. And that, could potentially see something if Walker does look good this offseason. But I've never been high on Andrews, and I'm going to stick off of it because I'm stubborn, and that's my opinion.
The only thing I'll say is I don't think he's that injury prone. He missed 7 games this season, not great, and one of them was mm,
Yeah.
11% snap share. But before that, 15 of 17, 17 of 17, 14 of 16,
Yeah.
15 of 16, and 16 of 16. So like he's only missed a few games. Uh,
And with that,
we are past that point. If you are here, we appreciate you guys staying with us throughout this. Atlanta, you guys have a great night. Appreciate you guys joining. Follow us on the YouTube for a little bit more action here. We're wrapping up the pacer test. We're going to jump into some predictive buy, sell holds for 2025. Interesting segment. Evan, I liked where your head was at with that one. But why don't you wrap up Mark Andrews here for the pacer test here? What do you
yeah,
think? Tight end
I
one
think,
at a 17 game pace.
dude. I mean, when we did our redraft, we knew we were both targeting him and Dalton Kincaid at their ADPs. I think they're a phenomenal value at their current ADPs. And honestly, we probably should have reached for him and drafted him around even earlier.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think he's definitely worthwhile too. They didn't add any pieces to the offense that I'm worried about. So like Devontae Walker, I'm sure he might take some targets. And the only thing I'm worried about is if all these talks about likely are actually true, and all this hype about likely going on right now, is actually true, bro. But yeah, that could be just hopeful inside thoughts too, because I have likely. So
Appreciate you out there again, Nick. Oh, and I was just gonna switch it on over to sportsman like misconduct. Mason's boy, giving him a little bit of shit here. Jacoby Myers enthusiast, only the one and only Mason could have that. I've never
I love
seen anybody else
Jacoby.
so high on Jacoby.
I love Jacoby Myers.
We all got to have our guy.
Yeah, he's my guy. Who I don't got to back it up anymore. He produced last year with
He did.
terrible
We gave you your props too. I told you, I was like, all right, Mason called it. He gave him definitely a higher ranking than any of us did in Dynasty at that point. And still got another 2 years left on the contract. Hopefully, Minshew either steps up into that role or not. There was one other comment, though, really quick before we move on to the buy, sell, and holds. I liked what Nick was saying here about where was it? Here. So, Mason, Nick says, problem is if they extend Brandon Ayuk, how are they going to extend Brock Purdy? If it came down to one or the other, which way are you leaning?
Well, quarterback's the most valuable position, so obviously there. But to really answer that question is extend Ayuk, keep him on the team. There is, the way Debo's contract is set up, there'd be a lot more teams, I think, willing to take it on next year. Obviously, he's going to get paid. Niners won't cut him. There's no chance with that. But, he could find his way to a different team because of that. And, because it's going to be his last year of his contract, it's not going to be as high of trade value. So some team might be willing to throw something in there. Slick Rick, Niners are thinking about his future. They have some plan in mind if they do extend that.
They put him on the pup.
Yeah, it was a non-football related injury.
Yeah, it says undisclosed. It's preseason, so take it for what it is. But
yeah, and you can be put on that. The non-football related injury could just mean you're sick. It could just mean you have the flu.
Okay.
So I haven't seen really any reports. Nobody's said anything about what it is from what I've seen. So I'm not worried about that. It's really the likelihood of if Ayuk is extended that this is going to be Debo's last year. Who I love my Debo, but
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I put up something on Twitter talking about Ayuk, where he could go, and definitely a passionate 49ers fan out there saying there's no chance that they're getting rid of Ayuk. If anyone, they get rid of Debo. Debo's contract does not allow that this year. He has a dead cap over $40 million. So he's not going anywhere.
Paid like 23 mil, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So they would be losing money by cutting him and don't get his production. But next season, if they decide to cut or trade him post June 6th, I believe it dropped to like, I know the cap savings was around 15 million. I believe the dead cap was only at like 6 mil in 6 or 7 mil, and his cap hit was like somewhere around 21, 22.
Yeah,
So
no, that's just the more scenario that I see realistic, just because.
yeah.
I mean, Debo has been such a fundamental part of the offense, and he's Jalen Ramsey's dad, and I love seeing that. I've loved seeing that for years. But
Yeah, so they would save $17.5 million by trading him or cutting him after June 1st in 2025.
and
Um,
that's enough to pay Purdy. There's a lot of guys on the defense, not our studs. Obviously, a lot of our studs are already paid, but there's a lot of
right.
guys that are going to be needing contracts as well, so it would make sense.
Yeah, and then, we all know that the NFL and their GMs can work magic with the cap space, but as of right now, heading into 2025, the 49ers are going to be $38.9 million over the cap. So they're already going to need to create space on top of creating more space for a Purdy contract and IU contract. Not likely that they're going to be able to do both. Might have to cut I like move on from Ayuk and cut or trade Debo if they want to sign Brock. That'll be an interesting discussion for next year.
See, that's the beauty of liking a team that's one of the biggest, you know, most money making teams in the league is luxury tax. Who
Yep.
cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Cleveland can't say the same thing.
No. No.
Not at all. But yes, so let's move on to the buy, holds, and sells here. I'm gonna pull some of the ones that I think are a little bit more interesting here. So I'll start off with JSN. JSN, 22.4 years old right now. We're thinking 2025 for this. We're going to lay down a hypothetical stat line for 2024, the upcoming season. And we're going to say, A, is this a realistic thing that could happen? B, do you hold weight in that? And C, if you do, are you going to try to move on from him? Are you buying? Are you holding? Are you selling? So JSN, the stat line that I created was not far off of what he did last season. It was still an improvement. But last season, JSN, he finished the year with 93 targets, 63 receptions, 628 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I have him going up in all categories, but not by a ton. 70 receptions, 100 targets, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns. That would give him 151 half PPR points. Last year, that would have made him wide receiver 36 in 2023. Current dynasty ranking is wide receiver 25. I think we. I'll speak for myself only. I won't put any words in your guys' mouth. I think he will have a better season than that. I think he is likely to step into the wide receiver 2 role, but I don't think that Tyler Lockett is just going to be a complete afterthought and JSN just takes over. We heard about the Washington, was it the head coach or the offensive coordinator coming in? Regardless, the guy from Washington University, he runs 3 wide receiver sets
Yep.
all the time. They're already talking about that right now. That's all the wide receivers that are worth a damn are getting on the field, making an impact. JSN looks like he's stepping into the wide receiver 2 role. But if it's still kind of spread out here and he ends up with this type of a stat line, wide receiver 36, let's call it, are you guys trying to cut bait while he's still young? He'd be just 23.4 years old at this point next year. Um, Trying to cut bait, Mason?
No, I mean, I think Jason's a buy. I think he will have an improvement of a season. It might not be anything that's going to win you weeks. I think he will have an improvement, and that will at least get his value up. Looking at Tyler Lockett, he is technically signed through the 2025 season, but if they keep him, his cap hit's going to be around 31 million, and the
Yeah.
dead cap if they cut him would only be 4 million. So like, when you got an aging receiver, unless Tyler Lockett absolutely balls out this season, then
Right.
I don't see Seattle keeping him. And whether or not you think JSN is going to be great or not, when you look at fantasy trends, the second that someone pops into that wide receiver two potential, or their depth chart moves up, their value is going to move up. So whether or not you believe in them, if you're a rebuilding team, trading for JSN now, and then even trading him away next offseason, the value will go up. There's no chance it doesn't.
Yeah, if he doesn't, like, if this is his actual stat line though, and he doesn't perform with this new offensive coaching staff, I do expect him to do better than this. But if he doesn't meet my expectations of what I want him to do, which is I want to see him hit 1,000 yards this next year, and if he does, then I'm keeping him for sure. But if he doesn't, I may be trying to sell him because he is still going to hold value. He's still so young. And with the potential and the name value, it's still there. And you wait one more year after this year, and say 2025, he has like a campaign like his rookie campaign. His value, you're not going to be able to get what you would have gotten from him in 2024. Like the value is going to drop significantly. So.
Right. Yeah. Even though it was a little bit later in the draft, he was still the first wide receiver taken in the draft 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I do think that there's no world where he doesn't increase his value. However, this is a hypothetical for this. And if he does only return on this value, he only puts up 70 receptions, 800 yards, and 6 TDs, ends up wide receiver 36. I think that there's going to be people out there like this that are trying to grab a young, talented wide receiver, still think there's the potential for growth. But we've seen tons of wide receivers, especially when they don't have a locked in quarterback. Howell's on a deal, but we just saw him not really support wide receivers in the Washington offense. And then Geno's aging; he's likely going to be a cap cut next year, along with Lockett. But they'll bring in wide receivers, they'll bring in a quarterback, and if it's a rookie quarterback, it's probably not good news for JSN. So
Sam Howell.
that's what I said though. Sam Howell didn't support a wide receiver two in Washington
Spread
last
the ball a lot.
That's with Washington wide receivers.
Yeah, and Sam Howell spread the ball a lot. And when you got DK as the obvious number one, and then Lockett and JSN fighting for that number two position,
Way better wide receiver group. Way better wide receiver group.
Oh,
right. And I've said that so many times this season. I agree.
Offensive
I said
line.
it earlier in today's episode. I agree that the wide receiver group's way better, and that will help Howell have a better season.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily going to mean that JSN has like this crazy jump. The one thing I do want to bring up really quick though is JSN was only used in the short area of the field last year. It is 6.4 yard ADOT. That is ridiculously low, like embarrassingly low to the point where, the offensive coordinator should have either been fired or at least thinking about what he's doing to this man. They just drafted with their first overall pick. I love JSN. Not only am I an Ohio State fan, I'm a roster, I'm a manager of JSN. I fully believe in the player and the eventual long-term return on investment. But right now, if we're playing out this hypothetical, I personally would move on if he has this bad of a season in his year two.
Yeah, same.
No, I think that just year three he's gonna have the sky's the limit, and I mean,
if he doesn't hit in that year three though, you're not getting anything for him. You're not getting shit for him.
It's the first time we've seen Seattle without Pete Carroll in a long time, so it's going to be an entirely new team. I mean, that's why Lockett honestly could not be used as much with this entire new coaching staff, new ran offense. They could decide, okay, Lockett's an aging receiver. He only did so good because they targeted him so much. I mean, that could be some idea that goes into their mind. Lockett's a good receiver, don't get me wrong, but like they could decide to finally move off Lockett a lot this season, and I think now is really one of the lowest you might be able to buy JSN. I mean, just
I'd agree with that because last year, he's a rookie coming in. Everyone has hopes for the rookies. I don't think Lockett's again. I don't think he's just going to disappear. Even last year, 122 targets, 79 receptions, 894 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The guy knows how to avoid hits. He just goes down before he can take that big hit, extends his playing time, stays healthy. I think that with it being more 3 wide receiver sets, that is not necessarily a great thing for JSN. I he's going to be on the field more. He'll have more route share, but if you truly believe that he could overtake Lockett for the wide receiver 2 role, then you would hope that there'd just be 2 wide receiver sets where it's just him, Metcalf, 2 tight ends, and a running back, or whatever the mix may be. So I don't know if that necessarily behooves Jackson Smith and Jigba right now, but I do think that he is the better talent and obviously the younger, more explosive talent. Really quick, just to build on the A dot point I was bringing up, of all wide receivers with 80 targets or more in the season, there's 49 of them. Jackson Smith in Jigba was 48th in terms of A dot. Only person that had a lower A dot than him, surprisingly, Rashee Rice. We talked about a lot. Everyone's running the cover 2 shell against the Chiefs. Don't want to give up the long ball. So maybe that's why Rashee Rice has that underneath usage. But that's the only player with 80 targets or more that had a lower A dot than JSN. Guys ahead of him, like Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, even Debo Samuel is amazing, but the reason he has such a low A dot is because he is the yak king, and he can be used that way. So JSN's not that same type of guy. Expect the A dot and the efficiency to go up. Like Evan said, hoping he hits that 1,000-yard mark. Unless anyone has something pertinent to add to that, let's move on to George Kittle. Cool. George Kittle, 30.7 years old. This hypothetical stat line is considering Brandon Ayuk is traded. I know there's no shot that he hits this with Ayuk still on the team. Let's say Ayuk is traded away. They lean on Kittle a little bit more, not even a little bit more, a decent amount more. He had hypothetical stat line, 90 receptions off 140 targets, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. The yardage and the touchdowns is not that unrealistic at all. However, the 140 targets would be a career high for Kittle, and the 90 receptions would also be a career high. I believe both by 4. Yeah, 4 and 2. He has 88 receptions as a career high and 136 targets. So not far off his career highs. However, the career high came in 2018, a whole 6 years ago at this point. That's a tough area to be in. But let's say he does hit these marks. If he did, he would have 203 half PPR points. That'd be tight end 1 last season. That being said, we're thinking about 2025 in these hypothetical buy, hold, sells. George Kittle would be 31.7 years old, but arguably at least a top 3 tight end given this scenario. Would you guys be trying to, let's say, obviously if you're rebuilding, you're not buying. If you're a win now team though, just a normal tight end, everyone gets 1 point per reception league. Are you trying to buy, hold, or sell Kittle as a contender?
Right now, as a contender,
Given the hypothetical, is what it's all about.
Okay, so the hypothetical that Ayuk is gone because his value is definitely boosted a little more right now because Ayuk, there's uncertainty of it, but Ayuk is probably more than likely going to stay. And the second that happens, Kittle's value is going to fall. If you're not a serious contender,
Mason, it's a hypothetical. It's not even a possibility right now. In this hypothetical,
Ayuk is gone.
Ayuk is gone. Kittle did just put this up. Right now we are sitting in 2025, 1 year away from this.
So
holy shit!
News drops right now that Ayuk's gone.
Yes, Ayuk is gone. We know nothing else. But in this hypothetical, Ayuk is gone, and Kittle just put up 203 points in a half PPR league.
I
but
mean,
is
if
also
Ayuk is
31.7 years
gone,
old.
I don't know. His general consensus value would rise a lot. Do I think he's going to produce that much more? No, I really don't. I mean, Ayuk got
Imagination.
Ayuk Kittle got surgery
Imagination,
on his
Mason.
chest or something that to repair, like something in his midsection. I feel bad. I don't necessarily remember what it is. Kittle's getting older. He's still a beast. He's gonna have that boom or bust week. If you really are not a true contender and where you don't have good floors everywhere else, I don't know about getting Kittle. He's a very weird point because as he might just more sit back and block a lot more. I mean, even if Ayuk's gone, they're probably gonna maybe the first couple weeks Kittle does get more usage, but Slick Rick is gonna eventually. Niner fans are gonna be dying to see him if Ayuk is gone. They're gonna want to. They're gonna be like, I will be personally begging to see why did we let Ayuk go? Let's see who his replacement is. And I mean, you got to think Jawan Jennings is a solid wide receiver 3 as well. And then the touchdowns, 8 touchdowns is what this has it. I don't know. Just Christian McCaffrey's on the team.
I
Is
get you, but I mean,
like the touchdowns are gonna go to Christian McCaffrey. That's how it is. And then Debo's gonna be running these trick plays. I mean, Kittle's the most boom or bust player. And if you're
boom or
trying to
bust.
contend and you need a guy who can absolutely win it for you, because Kittle will probably have 4 weeks this next season where he's tight end 1, but he will probably also have 4 weeks where he doesn't finish as a top 20 tight end. That's just
Yep.
It's just how it is.
Yeah.
If you have the floor to risk it for Kittle, go for it. But if you
It's incredibly fair. All I'm saying though is so last year 6 touchdowns with CMC there, 1,020 yards with CMC there. So both it's 2 touchdowns and 80 yards off of what he already did last year. Year before that, even CMC was on the team for I think it was like what 6 or 8 games, maybe a little bit more
something
even.
around that mark, yeah.
Yeah, because he got traded right around the deadline. So he had Kittle that season, 11 touchdowns. Did not have as many receiving yards, but this is all within the realm of possibility, especially again, given the hypothetical, Ayuk is off the team, Kittle is going to be leaned on. We've seen that be the case. Anytime there's an injury on the team, it's like, all right, let's line up Kittle because he's about to pop. And he more often than not does pop off when there's an injury or a guy missing a game for whatever reason.
Yeah, but I just felt like this was his most inconsistent year of his career, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve for him because hypothetical Ayuk is gone. I mean, Kittle could be a big trade early for. He might blow up the first couple weeks, then trade him away once Pearsall starts to work into his role. It just
I would
Mason,
be so
to
mad
your
though
point,
because I miss this gigantic buy window right now. Like there's a gigantic buy window for him. If he does hit this, like there's going to be a big price difference in which you'd have to pay, just because age it doesn't matter as much with the tight end. So you could still get away with getting good value back.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw the the notification on your phone or computer or anything, but about 30 minutes ago, I threw George Kittle on the trade block.
Oh, really?
I mean, in that dynasty league, I also have Kyle Pitts and Pat Fryermuth. A little bit.
I do have a bunch of picks, and I am looking for a tight end. So
I mean, let's make
we
something happen,
might be
brother.
able to make
Let's get
something
this
happen.
done. We'll figure something out. But yes, George Kittle in this hypothetical, if he does it, this is the reason why I chose him as a name, is because he's getting up there in age for sure. And honestly, this kind of worried me just looking at it right now. Most recent news in Sleeper. George Kittle loses significant weight this offseason. No, he had the core surgery. I imagine he'll get some of that back before the season starts. But he was sitting at 250 pounds. He is a vicious blocker, but he does have a injury history. If he loses weight, that's not going to do well for George Kittle being a crazy motherfucker out there just trying to in every dude's face. He's probably gonna get injured, or has a higher risk of being injured if he loses weight and stays the same maniac self. Which there's no way that dude changes for anyone.
Oh, I just
So
gotta say, George Kittle is the most polite, crazy motherfucker in the league.
agreed. Yeah,
He'll
dude.
knock
It's
your ass on the
Did you
ground
guys
and
watch
say,
the show Receiver?
"Hey,"
I haven't seen Receiver
No, I
yet.
haven't watched it yet. And
Dude, you
literally,
honestly
George Kittle
Is
and
priceless.
Amon Ra is in it. I don't know why I haven't watched it.
You have totally you need to watch it. Like tonight, whatever you're doing, stop, watch it. It's great. It's good stuff.
I gotta watch House of the Dragon first. I missed it on Sunday, and then I'm in. All right, so I'll let you guys pick the last player we're going to talk about here. So at tight end, we still got Jake Ferguson. Wide receiver, we got Cooper Kupp still. Running back, Zach Moss, Devon Achane. And then quarterback, I put Justin Fields and Josh Allen on different ends of the spectrum here. Who are you guys most interested in bringing up here? And if you guys are watching
would have
still on
picked
the
HN
YouTube,
if
feel
you
free
put
to
up
drop a comment.
astronomical numbers, but you put on a low end for HN. So I'm like,
I mean, I think Fields is the most interesting.
Okay, I like it. So in this hypothetical,
yeah.
Russ either goes down to injury early in the season or is just awful, or Justin Fields just beats him out for the job. Justin Fields in this hypothetical, still, not very efficient in the passing game, completes 250 of 400 pass attempts, not too far off of his career highs, 30 off of his career high in attempts, only 23 off in his completions. And in that season, he only played 13 games. So not too far off there. 18 passing touchdowns, only one higher than his career high. 6 interceptions. That is where, efficiency would be on his side. I do think we saw, like Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ritter. They're not good quarterbacks, and they didn't look atrocious in terms of their touchdown to interception ratio under the Arthur Smith system. That is because it is so ridiculously limited. But the rushing's still there. 170 rushing attempts for 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. This would put him in a 4-point per passing touchdown league at 318 points, which last year would have made him quarterback 6. We know rushing is king in fantasy. So that's kind of what this hypothetical is about. Right now, Justin Fields is currently 25.3 years old. So next year in this hypothetical after this season would be 26.3, coming off of the last year of his deal. So what do you guys think about that? Again, this hypothetical, these numbers, QB6, but he does not have a guaranteed contract.
I'm just gonna say he's a hole because either at some point this season he's gonna become the starter for the Steelers, or if he doesn't, next year somebody's gonna give him that starting chance. And just the fact when you're a starter who has a lot of uncertainty around you, the value is gonna boost. And that's just whether or not he's gonna be a better player. There will be at some point in his career, whether it's this season or next season, where his value is going to go up. And if you don't have faith in him, like I do not have faith in Justin Fields, his value will increase at some point. And if he does start this year, trade him, get rid of him. He's not going to do better than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is a seasoned vet. That offense under Arthur Smith is not going to help either quarterback. But once Fields gets that starting opportunity, his value is going to skyrocket.
But would you trade him if he put up that stat line?
Yeah, right. Evan, thank you for buying into the hypothetical. Mason, this hypothetical is fact for you right now.
Yes.
It's not like
I'm just a realist, man. I'm just saying. But if he does,
I get what you're saying. But
if he puts this up, he's going to actually jump up.
We're accepting this as if we're in 2025 and this has already happened.
I think if he does hit this stat line, he could reach his highest value that he's ever seen potentially.
If he puts up 1,000 yards, yes, he will reach his highest value. So
He's already he hit a
not going to because
1,043
he's not
yards
going to
in
play
2022.
that much.
Yeah.
He's already hit. He's like this is lower than his career high in both rushing yards and touchdowns. And again, this was in a season where he played 15 of 17 games, so didn't even play a full season.
If he's doing this in a new system, I think that he does like people will he'll have a complete career resurgence, and I do think that he could even be at least be at where it was before, if not a little bit higher, because
Right. I brought up
would
the
argue better weapons around him too, or who knows what it would take for him to hit this stat line, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I brought up Justin Fields in this scenario in a contract year because I do think that if he hits these hypotheticals and we've seen Tomlin exist as the Steelers quarterback since Cowher, what is it, like 16 15 16 years?
Or, you mean coach?
Bill Cowher?
Yeah, you called Tomlin a quarterback.
Oh, yeah, so I mean Tomlin's been the head coach since Cowher. And, 15 or 16 years, literally never had a losing season. I do think
But
that
Kenny
this is
Pickett was trash last year. That doesn't mean anything.
I think that means everything. If they've never had a losing season and Pickett was trash, and you think Russell Wilson and I would say Justin Fields is better than Kenny Pickett,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that they still have a winning season. And if he puts up these types of numbers and they have a winning season, like always happened under Tomlin, he's probably going to get extended. They could do that at still a pretty cheap price because I feel like the rushing quarterbacks still don't get the same respect in terms of finances as the passing quarterbacks do, unless you are truly elite like Lamar or Jalen or Josh Allen. The rest of the guys, for the most part, kind of die out, don't get those big contracts. So I think if he was able to capitalize in a contract year in this type of way, he'd probably get extended. I still would say to sell him. I on top of everything I said, I would still sell him because there's not the assurance in the passing game. If he doesn't put up numbers, and if they don't bring in anybody else, if it's still next year, Pickens, Roman Wilson, Van Jefferson will fuck off somewhere. But if, they'll bring in somebody else that's mid tier. Maybe Calvin Austin can step up, but there's just not enough of a system around him where I believe that Fields could continue to return on this year after year. So I would end up selling him in this scenario. However, I'm a manager of Justin Fields, and I'm really fucking pulling for this right now. Like, please, Justin Fields, put up some
this one and the Kittle one, I'm sure.
Dude, yeah. I mean, for real, yeah. That's why he's on the block.
Yeah.
In the middle of the talk, I was like, you know what? I probably should at least test the market.
I see your tactics over there.
Yeah. We gotta make some moves. All right. I like these segments though. This was a lot of fun. That's gonna do it for this week on the Fantasy Rant podcast. We are creeping closer and closer, boys, though. We are just 50 days away from football. It's going to happen before you know it. And I mean, what? Training camp's a week away? Not even really. Rookies are starting to show up.
Started for some rookies yesterday.
Yeah, rookies are starting to show up now. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot here in tune for you guys, including Mason's line right here. Jimmy G is the best player in the league, says anyone who knows football. Says the Jacoby Myers enthusiast.
I hate Jimmy G with passion. That's a joke. Nobody take that.
Yeah, I was gonna say somebody's got to declare that for him.
I'm just gonna throw it on him. Mason was 100% serious about that comment.
Yeah, Mason,
everyone out there. That's all we have to say. Have a great
I would rather
week.
take Nick Mullins back before I'd take Jimmy G back. All right.
All right.